Uh-oh. The last cookie.
You can get a new box of cookies in as fast as an hour with Walmart Express Delivery.
Are you my guilty self-conscience?
No, I'm the voice offering you promo code EXPRESS for free delivery on your first order.
Hey, who ate my cookies?
You mean, these cookies?
Order now. Welcome to your Walmart. Promotion valid for first express delivery order. $50 minimum subject to availability. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day. And that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
Hello and welcome to A Vulgar History Canadian Heritage Minute. It's going to be longer than a minute, so buckle in. My name is Anne Foster, and I am recording this from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, which is in Treaty 6 territory in the country of Canada. And I have some things that I need to get off my chest. But first, I'm going to explain the concept of a Canadian Heritage Minute. So, starting in 1991 in Canada, every TV show, basically any TV show watched by any Canadian, always had in at least one of the commercial breaks these 60-second Canadian Heritage Minutes, which just sort of quickly kind of give you like a little short story about something that happened in Canadian history. These were the Heritage Minutes. And I mean, there's so many of them. There's hundreds at this point. They're still making them. You know, like it's the sort of thing like in high school or college, it can be a drinking game, like who can remember them the most. Like people still quote them to each other now. These are produced by an organization called Historic Canada, or Historica Canada, which is a charitable organization that offers programs in both official languages, English and French. We have two official languages here, to explore, learn, reflect on our history, and consider what it means to be Canadian. And I have been moved to create my own Vulgar History Canadian Heritage Minute, which again, going to be more than a minute. I'm sure it's already been more than a minute, because what the fuck is going on? So okay, hi to my American listeners. I don't know what news you're allowed to hear under your current regime. So you may or may not know that Canada, the country, is fucking furious right now. We are furious. There's a saying that we have been saying here, and I don't know if you've heard it said, if you've encountered it. When I first heard it, I didn't know the full context, so I'll explain it to you so we all know together. People here are saying elbows up. And, you know, there's like merch that's saying that. People are graffitiing it on things. Like the vibe, it's really just like the whole country's united behind this slogan, elbows up. And so Canada, to be clear, is a colonial country with its own fucked up history of genocide, slavery, white supremacy. We've got our own shit going on, but I've never in my whole life seen the whole country come together like this. Like we know, God knows we have problems here, but it's sort of like one of my friends was saying, it's kind of like, you know, you can make fun of your sibling, but if someone else makes fun of your sibling, you will elbow that person in the face and break their nose. And that's what's happening with our country. It's like, yeah, it's a mess, Canada, but it's our mess. And how dare you come for us? So the whole country is so united right now behind this slogan, including, I just really want to give a special shout out to Quebec. Quebec is one of Canada's provinces. It is a province with a lot of people in it who speak French. And Quebec is, there have been at least two occasions during my life where they have had votes to decide, like, should we separate from the rest of Canada or not? They have a political party called the Bloc Québécois, who stands for a lot of interesting and often cool things. But one of the things they stand for is like getting Quebec the fuck out of Canada. This is a province that just like has wanted to leave Canada my entire adult life. Quebec is on board with all of this. On International Women's Day, on March 8th, I saw footage. There was like think it was in Quebec City, there was, just a rally for like International Women's Day. And at that rally, people wearing red. They were wearing red for Canada. Usually in Quebec, people wear blue and white for Quebec, but they were standing up for Canada. And one of the things they did is they had, I believe it was 8 minutes of silence in honor of the women in America whose rights are being removed. Like, fuck yes, Quebec, but also Quebec is on board. Bro, like, not only have you like awakened the sleeping dragon that is Canada, but like all of Canada, including Quebec. Like, we can skate, bro. Like, everyone here plays hockey. Like, and you're coming for us? Like, this is where Elbows Up comes from. So, I'm talking to you from Saskatchewan, and there is a very famous person, Canadian famous, from here called Gordie Howe, who is known as Mr. Hockey. Or he is now known as Mr. Hockey. Before then, he was known as Mr. Elbows. And so he's known as Mr. Elbows because although he's like a sweet, kind, like gentlemanly person off the ice, when you came for him on the ice, bro, like he would wield his elbows like weapons. Here's a quote from him. And I want to point out, this was always defensive. It's like, if you come for him, elbows up. He's not just coming out with elbows up. It's like, if you come for him. So Gordie Howe, Mr. Elbows / Mr. Hockey, said, quote, "If a guy slashed me, I'd grab his stick, pull him up alongside me, and elbow him in the head." And this is it. This is it. Like, picture it. Someone's coming for you. They come for you. You raise your elbow and then your arm, and then you hit them in the nose with your elbow, is, I believe, how you complete that action. So Canada's saying elbows up. We're not just being like, ooh, let's roll up our shirt sleeves and get to work. We're saying, fuck you. We're going to break your nose with our elbows. Why are we saying this? So a few weeks ago, the premier of Manitoba is another Canadian province. The premier there is Wab Kinew, an Indigenous man. He said, Canada can't be a punching bag and we have to get our elbows up. He said that. And then a few weeks later, recently, like last week, on SNL, Mike Myers, beloved Canadian icon, Wayne's World, Canadian characters, he's wearing a t-shirt that says Canada's not for sale, and then he mimes lifting up his elbow and like mouths elbows up. So the whole country is just like, fuck yes, elbows up. It's a rallying cry. It's on graffiti. It's on merch. Hashtag elbows up. Like, the whole country is united in a way I've never seen. Not during the Olympics. Like, Quebec, bro. Like, Quebec is in on it. Like, everybody is here. It's like, I went grocery shopping yesterday, and one of the things that's happening in Canada is we're all just being like, fuck other countries, specifically the one just to the south of us. Just that one, really. So Canada's just being like, we're just going to shop. When we go shopping, we're just going to buy our own stuff. We're just going to buy Canadian-made products. And every store has put little Canadian flags on the shelf underneath the product, so we can tell when we're shopping which products are Canadian or not. Like, we're finding ways to work together. Provinces for ages have had just sort of like impediments to like shipping something from one province to another. And the premiers are being like, let's look at that. Let's try to make it easier to ship things throughout Canada. Like, let's just be kind of self-sufficient. And like, if you're just thinking about like in terms of like products, in terms of industry, like, oh, well, like what are the things that Canada sends to other places? Like, for instance, the US. Oh, I don't know. Oil, gas, electricity, potash, which is important for farming apparently, paper, wood pulp to make your toilet paper. Like, these are the things that could and perhaps already have become really expensive and or unavailable in the US. You know what we get from the US? Like orange juice, Kentucky whiskey, I don't know, like peanut butter. Like, we're fine. Like, we're good with our own stuff we have here. I don't know, man. I feel like by the time this episode comes out, which we're like rushing into production because I'm so mad, I feel like the whole country, we're just going to like go Bugs Bunny, just like get out a saw and just like cut ourselves off the North American continent, maybe grab Mexico and just like float over to Europe, join the EU is where things seem to be headed. So I do a podcast about history. Not a lot of the episodes have been about Canadian history, and that's on me. And that's also on the white supremacist history of the Western world, where there's a lot more written about white women in England than there have been about other women in most other places in the world. But anyway, the Canadian history that I know about, a lot of it, honestly, I found in Heritage Minutes. And I'm going to tell you a story right now that is in a Canadian Heritage Minute. And I'm doing this as a special mini episode, separate from the other episodes, just because I'm really worked up about this. The OG Vulgar History listeners, people who were listening in 2019, 2020, maybe you'll recall when COVID started, like 5 years ago this week, basically when the world shut down. I did some little mini episodes then as well, just about kind of like pandemics and history and stuff. So this is kind of maybe a similar thing. I feel like I'm probably going to do some more of these Canadian history minutes. And that's the thing. That's the thing. Part of why I haven't done a lot of Canadian women on vulgar history, the podcast, is because I like to do an hour-long podcast. And to find a person where I can talk about them, where there's enough facts known to make it an hour long, Canadian history is more concise or something. So, but this is the story that I really want to tell you, that I've wanted to tell you for a while, and it is about the one and only Viola Desmond. So she is from Halifax, Nova Scotia, which I live in Saskatchewan now. I was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I grew up there. It's on the east coast of Canada. And so Viola Desmond was a Black woman. She was born July 6th, 1914. And I do want to clarify, just for people who might not know, that there has always been, in the context of since the 1700s when Halifax was invented as a city, a strong, vibrant Black community on the east coast of Canada, especially in Nova Scotia. A lot of that came from people who escaped slavery in the Caribbean, the Maroons, also some people who, after the British lost the American Revolution, some of those people fled, like free Black people, up to Nova Scotia as well. So there was, and there still is, and there has been for a really long time, a really strong Black cultural community in Nova Scotia. And that's where Viola was born into. So there's a lot of Black people there. And she's this glamorous, beautiful person. And she recognized there was a lack of professional hair services for Black women, not just in Halifax, but in the entire province. So she was born in 1914. So I'm going to imagine probably around the 1930s is when she's like an adult person. And she's like this glamorous lady. She's beautiful. She's stylish. She's so chic. Look at pictures of her. She's gorgeous. Amazing hair, amazing outfits. And she was just like, there's not places for like this thriving Black community, like the women, where can we get our hair done? And so she's not just a glamour lady, like she's an entrepreneur. She sees how she can give back, but also how she can make a name for herself. And so she decided to train herself as a beautician, which she could not do in Nova Scotia because Black women weren't allowed to attend beauty school. There wasn't like Jim Crow segregation, but there was a lot of racism and prejudice going on there. So she went to Montreal to train in Quebec. She also went to the US to train in Atlantic City and in New York City. She's getting cross-trained. She's learning all the skills. So she came back to Nova Scotia. She came back to Halifax because she wanted to give back. She knew that this was a place where people needed this. They needed Black hair care. And so she not only opened a salon, but she also opened a training school so she could train other people to become beauticians to help Black women with their hair, which is just admirable and wonderful and lovely. She's the Fenty beauty of her time. She also started her own line of beauty products, like hair products, like makeup. A lot of them, the packaging was like purple. Purple is her favorite color. So I love that she started a business. It's a business for Black women. I love that she's giving back, like Pat McGrath of her time, just innovating and finding ways to kind of like make a name for herself, like keep herself going, have this career, and also be giving back to the next generation of Black people. And because it's the 1940s, so she's going, and she's in Nova Scotia, she's going town to town being like, hey, you know, these are my products. Do you want to sell them in your store, etc.? So she would just kind of go place to place. And in 1945, November 8th, 1945, and you know nothing is good when a specific date comes out. It's like, why do you know that name? Something terrible is going to happen. And it does. So she went to New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, and while there, wouldn't you know, her car broke down. So while her car was being fixed, she was like, oh, movie theater nearby. Great. So she went to the nearby Roseland Film Theater to see a movie. You know, she had some time to spend. And again, there's no segregation laws. Like there's no Jim Crow. We're in Canada. Like it's a country with a rich history of anti-Black racism, but there's no specific law. Informally, there is kind of like cultural practices. There was no signs in the movie theater. I feel like this is a town where maybe there's not a lot of Black people at this time, perhaps. You know what? Could be wrong. I could be wrong. But she certainly wasn't from that town. And she was just like, there's floor seats in the movie theater and then sort of like a balcony. And she's like, well, I want the floor seats. Those are the better seats. So she takes a floor seat. There's no signs anywhere saying like black people can't sit here. She does. And then it turns out that the like policy of this place was they only sold floor seats to white people. So a employee came up to her and was like, you can't sit here. You need to move. And she's like, there's no sign saying I can't sit here. Like, bro, I'm going to sit here. This is where there's some comparisons to, I have seen it said, when people, when you're trying to compare a historical person, but in context, you compare them to another historical person, it's like the Rosa Parks of Canada, quote unquote. And it's like, yeah, she is a black woman who sat somewhere and then was told to move. There's that comparison. Rosa Parks was part of a larger civil rights movement, and Viola Desmond was just a lady who wanted to watch a movie. So similarities, yes. But Viola Desmond was very much on her own in this. So anyway, she was just like, I'm not going to move. Like, she's like, I will pay the extra penny to sit here because it costs like 1 penny extra to sit on the floor versus the balcony. Anyway, they like forcefully removed her from the theater, which sounds like extremely forcefully, like to the point that she injured her hip in the process. So they're grabbing her very forcefully. And then she's sent to fucking jail for 12 hours. What is the charge? Tax evasion, because floor seats were 1 more cent in tax. And she hadn't paid that 1 cent because this is all bullshit. So anyway, tax evasion. She's taken to court the next day. She has no legal representation because she's in New Glasgow and she doesn't know anybody. And it's like a fake charge and everyone's just being heinous to her. Like, she's just being set up, being gaslit by these people. She's ordered to pay $26 in fines, which is like, in olden times, I'm sure more than what $26 would buy now. But it's like the principle of it too. She's just like, this is some bullshit. What the fuck is happening? She hired a lawyer. She filed a lawsuit against the theater. The lawsuit was dismissed because of racism. And I'm going to skip over. But basically, in quick order, she was like, fuck this. She closed her Nova Scotia businesses. She closed the beauty salon. She closed the school, her beauty products. And she's just like, got the fuck out of there. She's like, I'm moving to Montreal, Quebec, au revoir. Later, she moved to New York City, which is where she lived until she died age 50 in 1965. So that was the end of her life, but not the end of her story. So if you go in Halifax on Gottingen Street, which is like North Gottingen Street, which is one of the historically Black neighborhoods in Halifax, there's a beautiful, and this is actually brought to my attention by a member of the Tits Out Brigade who lives near there, like near this mural. It's sort of like a mural / display where they've painted / decoupage wallpapered up so it looks like her salon. And there's a lot of purple everywhere because purple is her favorite color. That was the color of her products. And so, there's like chairs with like the hairdryer on it and kind of signs advertising her products around. And it's like this beautiful tribute to her on the street where she was so important. And so, how do I know her story? Not because I was told it growing up in Halifax, for I was not, because racism. But she is the subject of a literal Canadian Heritage Minute as well, but also her family and the Black community of Nova Scotia kept her story alive, demanding that she be given respect as a Canadian hero for standing up for herself and also for everything she achieved as this entrepreneur, businesswoman. And so her family, the Black community, like advocated for her for decades, which has resulted in her being honored in many ways. For instance, a few years ago, a stamp was issued with her portrait. There's a ferry, like Halifax, there's a harbor there, and there's ferries that go across the harbor. One of them is called the Viola Desmond. And since 2018, her portrait has been on the $10 bill in Canada. And so let's see, so much stuff. She's been named a National Historic Person. She has a star in Canada's Walk of Fame. In 2010, the Nova Scotia Lieutenant Governor, Mayanne Francis, a Black woman, granted Viola Desmond a posthumous pardon for her crime of tax evasion, which was the first ever posthumous pardon granted in Canada. And Viola Desmond Day is celebrated annually on November 8th to celebrate this amazing woman who's on the $10 bill. Like, just to emphasize, again, Canada. So much fucked up stuff going on right now, has gone on here. And also, we have Viola Desmond, this Black woman, this entrepreneur who was done so dirty on our $10 bill. This month, or actually last month, every year in Canada in February for Black History Month, there's a stamp released with a notable woman from Canadian Black history. This year's was Marie-Joseph Angelique, who we've talked about on Vulgar History podcast, the enslaved Black woman who burned down Montreal. Like, this country honors badass women, and I really appreciate that. Not every country does. Like, don't come for Canada. Like, what are you doing? Like, we will fuck you up. like, like these are our heroes. Gordie Howe, the man who like elbows people in the face, is our hero. Viola Desmond on the $10 bill. Marie-Joseph Angelique on our stamp. Like, come on. Like, what are you doing? Why are you coming for Canada? Like, be for fucking real. So if you're an American thinking like, oh, this sucks, like, which I was just in Minneapolis meeting with several Americans, many of whom expressed apologetic feelings about what is happening there right now. And I know it's not hashtag not all Americans. But if you're like feeling like some kind of way and you want to support Canada or you want to support Canadians, well, you're already doing it by listening to this podcast, which is supporting a Canadian person who is me. Because this podcast is on the Realm Network, which is an American network. So technically, America is paying me every time you listen to this podcast because that's where I get my advertising revenue from. As for us in Canada, like, we're shopping local, bro. Like, our elbows are up. People here are like enlisting in the military. Like, this wave of patriotism is just like truly never seen anything like it. We're not, but it, like, the elbows up of it all, it's like, yeah, we're not a country, like, America has got a really sort of like forward facing, like, on the offense. If you're a sports team, I'm not good at sports metaphors, but like, America is like, fuck yeah, patriotism. And Canada's like, yeah, I guess we're Canadian. But if you come for us, then like, elbows up, patriotism is what's happening. I have mixed emotions about being a Canadian a lot of the time because of the history of this like colonial nation. Just like me as like a white person in Canada, it's just kind of like I know this country is so shitty for so many people. Like, and the history, like the genocide, the racism, like, it's all there. But this is like a beautiful moment of all of us. It's like, what is it? Like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Like, people from all walks of life, like the pro Canada vibes right now are like heartening and wholesome and heartwarming. And sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I feel sort of ashamed of like that Canada is where, I don't know, can I say that in a podcast? But like, not ashamed, but just kind of like, this is this country that was founded on genocide, and here I am, a white person living in it, and I just kind of like, that's a shitty thing. That's a shitty thing. But all people in Canada, from all different walks of life, all different cultural backgrounds, like, everyone is just like, you're fucking with us, like, we will fuck you up. And that's the kind of patriotism I can get behind. So I don't know. Wherever you are, like, if you've got Canadian maple syrup nearby, like, get some, like, pour it into a shot glass, raise a toast to Canada, this glorious and fucked up place. Like, I don't know. I'm feeling all kinds of ways. And I feel like I'm going to do more of these Canadian Heritage Minutes because there's more stories that I would like to tell you so you can further understand, like, the interesting people who are the reason why this country is what it is today. But yeah, I think a crucial difference between what's happening in America and what's happening in Canada can be demonstrated by the fact that we have Viola Desmond on the $10 bill. Years ago, I think in America there was going to be Harriet Tubman on currency, but then pretty sure that never happened, although there is the Anna May Wong commemorative quarter. But Canada has a lot to reckon with, obviously, in terms of treatment in the past and also contemporaneously of our Indigenous communities. And, I'm not going to say that Canada's like a perfect place or whatever, but like people here, there's good people here who are doing the best they can. Seeing Mike Myers wearing that shirt on SNL and hearing Wab Canoe say elbows up, like it's filled me with this rage-filled patriotism to an extent that I've never really felt before. And so I just wanted to share this all with you. Thanks for listening. Pants on, tits out. If you're in Canada, elbows up. Keep buying local, keep shopping local. We're all in this together. And au revoir for now. Vulgar History is researched, written, and hosted by Anne Foster. That's me. The editor is Christina Lumagi. Theme music is by the Severn Duo. The Vulgar History Show image is by Deborah Wong. Transcripts are written by Aveline Malik. Find transcripts of recent episodes at vulgarhistory.com.
I'm Amy Nicholson, the film critic for the LA Times.
And I'm Paul Scheer, an actor, writer, and director. You might know me from The League, Veep, or my non-eligible for Academy Award role in Twisters.
We love movies, and we come at them from different perspectives.
Yeah, like Amy thinks that, Joe Pesci was miscast in Goodfellas, and I don't.
He's too old. Let's not forget that Paul thinks that Dune 2 is overrated.
It is.
Anyway, despite this, we come together to host Unspooled, a podcast where we talk about good movies, critical hits,
fan favorites, must-sees, and in case you missed them.
We're talking Parasite to Home Alone.
From Grease to The Dark Knight.
We've done deep dives on popcorn flicks. We've talked about why Independence Day deserves a second look.
And we've talked about horror movies, some that you've never even heard of, like Ganja and Hess.
So if you love movies like we do, come along on our cinematic adventure.
Listen to Unspooled wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget to hit the follow button.
Listening to a podcast should be time well spent, and I promise it will be if you'll give this podcast a try. It's called Something You Should Know. I'm the host, Mike Carruthers, and in every episode, I talk with leading experts on topics I know you will find fascinating. From why people can't keep secrets, what your favorite music says about you, why your pet acts in strange ways, and so much more. Something You Should Know is designed to give you information you can use in your life and give you great intel that you can share with others. I'm told it's a binge-worthy podcast, and with over 1,000 episodes, there's a lot to binge on. Something You Should Know has been ranked in the top of the Apple Podcast charts consistently for a long time. I know you're going to like this. I just need to get you to try it. Something You Should Know. It's available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello, I am Kristen Russo.
And I am Jenny Owen Youngs.
We are the hosts of Buffering the Vampire Slayer, once more with spoilers, a rewatch podcast covering all 144 episodes of, you guessed it, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
We are here to humbly invite you to join us for our 5th Buffy prom, which, if you can believe it, we are hosting at the actual Sunnydale High School. That's right. On April 4th and 5th, we will be descending upon the campus of Torrance High School, which was the filming location for Buffy's Sunnydale High, to dance the night away to 90s music in the iconic courtyard, to sip on punch right next to the Sunnydale High fountain, and to nerd out together in our prom best inside of the set of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
All information and tickets can be found at bufferingcast.com/prom. Come join us.